Originally, the beacon was put on top of Mount Diablo as part of a transcontinental system of beacons to help in the early days of aviation. At night, there was no way for the planes to know where they were going without this beacon system that gave them targets for where to be headed. They continued to shine every night until December 8th, 1941, the day after Pearl Harbor was attacked. And because of that attack, the beacon was turned off as part of the West Coast blackout, and it was not relit again because after the war there was no need for the beacon system since radar was now available to help with the night flying. The beacon stayed dark until 1964, when the Pearl Harbor Survivors Group felt they wanted to do something to commemorate the fallen comrades and what had happened at Pearl Harbor. And they instituted the annual beacon lighting every December 7th, and it was Admiral Chester Nimitz who turned on the light again in 1964. And every year since then, on December 7th, the beacon is lit in order to remember the events of December 7th, 1941, and those who gave their life in service to this country.
Every chance that I've had, you know, when I talk to people somewhere and I've had a chance to mention the beacon or something like, tell them what it's about and why we light it and stuff like that, you know, and it meant a lot to have that, to have a way to honor and to remember our sunken shipmates and fallen comrades. And I think it's so unique that this beacon, because what other memorial can 12 million people partake of in a 10-second period of time? Huh? And you don't have to go to that beacon, to that memorial. It will come to you. All you have to do is make yourselves available, and that beacon will come to you.
So the beacon has been on top of Mount Diablo for about 85 years now, subjected to the intense weather conditions that impact on the top of the mountain. And over that period of time, it's taken quite a bit of abuse. The mechanical functions of the beacon were beginning to fail. There were a couple of times where there was severe question about whether the beacon would actually be able to rotate all night long once it was lit. And so it crossed our mind that this beacon really needed a complete restoration, and we began the process of trying to figure out what it would take to get that done. When we began to talk about what it would take to restore the beacon, we were maybe a bit naive and thought that we could do a little rewiring and a new coat of paint and replace the lenses on the front. And as we began to look at the project more intensely, this is an historic artifact. It needed to be treated with a lot of respect and restored in a certain kind of way to maintain its historic integrity. So we began to develop a budget, and we estimated that it was probably going to cost about $100,000 to undertake the entire restoration project. A daunting sum of money.
Once it was publicized that Save Mount Diablo was going to undertake the rehabilitation of the beacon, people started contacting us. We did not have to go out and search for these people.
Everything from electrical contractors to structural engineers to people who just wanted to do whatever it is they could to help. And we've put together a volunteer crew that have actually been doing the restoration work on the beacon.
John Gallagher, who has a hobby of restoring antique clocks and old motorcycles, among other things, said that he'd like to be involved. Bert Bogardus, the retired ranger, who's been working on the beacon since 1975, has remained to be actively involved. John Stewart, who does a fair bit of volunteer work with Save Mount Diablo, stepped forward and said that he would like to be involved. Rex Bothell of Global Village Construction said he had warehouse space that he could make available where we could do the work. That's where we are today.
Terry Seeley brought it up, and Bill Mahoney let me know that they were going to lift the beacon off of Mount Diablo. And so it was setting up to get the equipment needed for that, and since I'm responsible for that group, I felt it important for me to kind of be involved and help get that set up and make sure we got the right equipment and the right people in the right place to lift this beacon off Mount Diablo.
We did have to search for a glass expert, and through some of our contacts, some friends who have retired from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, we did find an optics physicist, and he's been invaluable. So we stumbled onto some people, other people stepped forward.
The day we removed the beacon from the top of the mountain in June of 2013 had a mixture of things going on. Everything from the mechanical side of would the winds be calm enough to allow us to lift this large beacon off of the building safely, to could we, after 85 years, would it withstand the movement and the transportation back down?
It was actually going very well because of the fact that we got there early enough. We were able to set stuff up and get prepared for the main lift. And we had some real good conversations about the safety side of it. The guys from Save Mount Diablo had to be underneath to help us with the bolts, and we knew that they had to get out of there before we actually started doing the lift, and really making sure we had safety in mind and that we had control of the whole area when we did start doing the lift.
We had some actual Pearl Harbor survivors who were there that day. And as the crane began to lift the beacon off of the top of the summit building, the Pearl Harbor survivors stood and saluted and watched it as it was lowered down to the parking lot and put onto the carrier that would take it down to Concord. There were tears in the eyes of the Pearl Harbor survivors. There were tears in the eyes of the riggers who were there helping to remove it from the top of the building and bringing it down.
Chuck, one of the Pearl Harbor survivors, came up to us and we said, "Thank you for allowing us to lift this beacon off. We think it's going to be a great thing." And he had our whole crew there, and he said, "You know what? No, thank you." And he said, "This is not just about me."
When they lifted that beacon up off the top of the observation building, to me, in my mind and in my mind's eye, it was like they were lifting my sunken shipmate, our sunken shipmates, up off the bottom of the harbor to be forever honored and remembered.
It just hit all of us. At that point on, I was the only one with no sunglasses on, and I was bawling. And they all were hiding with their sunglasses, and we all talked about it later, and it was like, man, that just hit it right there. This is not just us lifting this beacon off to help them restore it.
You know, it's interesting that we were mostly concerned about the mechanics of being able to get this beacon lifted off logistically, and where people would be and how safe would it be, and controlling the traffic up and down the road. And very little of our thought actually went to how emotional the experience was going to be. But all of a sudden, there it was. All the pieces were in place.
Here was the means up close that we've been using, and my fellow survivors have been using for all these years, to bring honor and remembrance to those people who lost their lives there. And believe you me, they deserve to be honored and remembered. And it also meant that if this restoration can be completed and put back up there, then it can go on doing that same thing for years and years to come.
Good enough. It's not going to come on.
When the emotions got to us up on top the first time when we pulled that thing off, it was like, man, we can do more. We got the ability, we can do a lot more to this thing if they need it. So I approached Dick and a couple of the other ones and said, you guys need anything at all, let us know. And they emailed us one day and said, hey, you know what, we got this bearing on the bottom, we're not sure how to get it out. Can you help us out? We got good expertise on taking bearings off. So I said, Daryl, let's get a couple guys from the shop, and Steve and Oscar are our guys who are going to go do it. And let's have them go over there, look at the whole thing, build the brackets, build what we need so we know how to take this bearing off, and let's help them out. And we went over one day and got the bearing off, and then next thing you know, they were asking for another bearing, and they thought they wouldn't be able to find this anywhere, and we had it on the shelf. So we were able to give them that bearing, as well as order some other bearings for some other parts of it, and for us it was great to give more. You know, we just wish we could have done more with it.
After the paint has hardened a little bit, we will rewire the beacon. Then we will set a new lamp stand in place. We will be installing a new type lamp. We've learned from the lamp manufacturer that the bulb that we have been using will no longer be available in about 2 years. So we are switching lamps. You know, a couple of volunteers did some work before we started disassembling the beacon to measure the existing condition of the lamp. And we will try to, you know, make sure that we reproduce the position and make sure we have at least that much intensity. 4 years ago, when we hired the first architectural preservation firm, they did a paint chip analysis, and I think we found like 7 layers of paint. We weren't sure which layer we ought to use, which should we try to replicate. So initially we went with the most recent, which was sort of a dark green. Cape Verde green was the name of that color. And that's where we were up until about 3 weeks ago. Then we found some unweathered paint on the gear case, which would have been sheltered from the sun. That was sort of an olive drab green. And for about a week, that was the color of our paint. Then the state historian, very fortunately, came upon a 1941 color photograph, which indicated that when the beacon was moved from a steel tower on top of the new summit building, the beacon was a bright silver. And so today we have our first coat of bright silver paint. We have had a number of visitors come to see the beacon as we were working on it. To me, that's rewarding that these people see value in what we're doing. It's rewarding to me to see their reaction. Today we had 2 people who are active in the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association Sons and Daughters visit. You know, they've been here a few times before, and they still like to come to see this baby of theirs to see how it's coming along.
Another emotional day. Chuck surprised us again. He brought us a fixture for putting on the crane to have the American flag raised while we're doing this thing. And so again, it meant a lot to really put it up. It wasn't just about putting the beacon back up. It was more than that. It was nice to see it when they brought it back. They did a great job of the restoration. Some of the stuff that was hidden brass was kind of faded and you really couldn't tell. They polished it up real nicely. And when you finally seen it come back, they did a good job preserving or protecting it while they were transporting it with covering up the lens. And so once he pulled the cover off the lens and stuff, it's like, wow, this is exciting. And then watching them put the bulb in it, you know, it was great to see.
All right, everybody smile.
Look up, smile.
Wonderful.
These are the important guys.
You betcha.
Yes, sir. They're the reason we're here. Send me in, Coach. I'm ready.
There we go. Oh boy, look at that. Wow. Yeah, man.
I think the thing that's going to stand out in my memory as a result of working on this project is the unselfish outpouring of assistance that we have received from every corner of the community. Everybody has come together to work on restoring and maintaining this icon, this beacon, the Eye of Diablo, with the goal of trying to make sure that it is there for the future. I think that's the beauty of a community working together, and that's what I'll remember.
I think the dedication of the historians, the curator, the park people that we've dealt with, I think has been outstanding. You know, the people on the ground that we typically work with in the park, you know, are right there with us. You know, they help guide the crane up to the summit. So I think just the feeling of cooperation.
During the whole project, we had some great people working with us. We had some great people working around us. And I think altogether, collaboratively, we did a great job with it. Again, everybody that worked with me, they all talk about it still.
We need to give credit where credit is due. And believe you me, there's a lot of credit due to a lot of people. Besides the ones who were actively involved, there's those people out there who you may never know who they are, but yet they participated. They gave of their funds, they gave of their material, they gave of their equipment, they gave of their time, they gave, you know, and some, there are some who maybe couldn't give, but gave of their thoughts.
I think that we try to say thank you to all of those people, individuals and businesses and corporations that have been part of helping us with this project, but you can never say thank you enough. So at this point, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has helped us with this project, or who has ever looked up at the beacon when it's shining on the evening of December 7th and just taking a moment to think about what it means to themselves personally, whether it's to remember Pearl Harbor or to remember another loved one who has given their life in service to this country, or maybe a hopeful thought for the future of our world and what it'll be like for our children and for our grandchildren. And my thanks to everyone for doing that.
I would hope that when that beacon is turned on and it sends its brighter and broader beam of remembrance out across all the valleys below, that people will take the time just to stop for a few minutes and look at it and think about what it means, why we do that, you know. And of course, it won't be too long in the distant future when there won't be any of us survivors left to light that beacon, but it still must go on. And the sons and daughters and, say, Mount Diablo, there'll come a time when they will be the ones who will flip that switch. And then, when those of us who are here now will have answered our final muster call, surely it will shine across some of the final resting places of some of those of us who are still here. And when it does, all of you who have participated in this can take further pride and further satisfaction in knowing that you have kept your promise to those of us who survived, as those of us who survived have kept our promise to all those who didn't.